Hi, and welcome to the Tali and Loz podcast, where we discover spirituality together. Today, I have with me Has, who will talk about the spiritual beliefs in veganism. Hi, Has, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, good to be here.
I think it's a concept that I have not thought about ever until we were introduced by Emma. So, Has, tell us about the spiritual beliefs into veganism. Where does that come from?
Okay, so growing up, I was religious, and in my teens, in my 20s, I guess you could just describe me as non-religious. That's still kind of the case now, although I take a lot of interest in different religions, and I think they all have something to say that's important and that kind of connects you to people and the past. Even the future, I guess, in some ways, if I let my imagination go. When it comes to veganism, I think what happens there is that, especially for someone like me that doesn't really have a religion or doesn't really believe in anything or doesn't know what to believe in, there's an aspect of it that's about care and towards others, all sentient life, and being grounded by suffering to an extent. I think when I've been particularly at the other end of non-belief, you can not care, I guess. And I think that's when it comes to veganism, the spirituality side might just be that really fits with me is caring for as many as possible, and then getting a real sense of suffering in the world, and that grounding me.
So it comes from because you grew up in a religion, and obviously you learn about love as well and caring. And when you're more spiritual, is it also the karmic belief that do you believe that the energy of the animals and the souls of the animals, when we consume animals, they will become a part of us, or they will interfere with our own spirituality? Do you see it that way?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one to say. I guess I'm really sort of a proponent of evidence and accurate observation and being true to oneself. And but at the same time, when you do hear these kind of statements made, as in I've heard it quite a lot. We can, if you eat the flesh of another being or an animal, you almost consume the fear that they've gone through. And I think that's a really interesting idea and interesting concept. And I'll have to say that it's difficult for me to deny, but it's also I don't know how to prove it. And the other aspect of this is that, observing the world around us and all of the difficulty and suffering, if I am at my most cynical, I sometimes think that it's because our treatment of each other doesn't kind of stop within our species. It's extended, and there are knock-on effects to our behavior, whether it's oppressive or caring, and that knock-on, that's manifested and represented through our treatment of others, whether that's animals that we consume or the companion animals that we have, or our children, or the people around us.
And do you also believe that if we consume other animals, that it would give a negative vibe onto Mother Earth, really, so that she, or Gaia, some people call it Gaia, some people like to call it Mother Earth, that has a knock-on effect on her as well, on the environment, and that she will get upset about it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking of the band Architects. I don't know if you or any of your viewers know of Architects, but there's a wonderful song lyric that goes, "An organism in conflict with itself is doomed." And it's almost as though that is the state of the planet that we're on. And I can certainly take my mind to places where we're thinking of an interconnected planet, that it has its own consciousness in a way. You know, I do think of our own individual consciousness, but group levels of consciousness or super consciousness in a way where there might be various levels of that, and it's you know, I think this veers on the side of in the area of sort of hard to prove again, but it is certainly something I think of. I think the other thing about this, if I sometimes step back from spirituality, and sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. It's like, well, what's really practical? And being a vegan for over 7 years now, it's been, you know, I was been consuming plant-based, and I'm still standing and I'm still alive, and it's that practical sense of things really sometimes helps me to say, you know, obviously I can be confident in doing this thing this way, but other times it is a little upsetting that there's this option here that seems fine for us to do, yet we choose to continue this other form of getting our food, which is which for all I can see, it seems completely unnecessary.
Also, on the spirituality point of view of veganism, some might say, when I was reading up on this subject, some might say that spirituality is also about accepting death as a natural process. So it's like an intrinsic part of life as birth as well. And this also accounts for plants, animals, and humans. And some might say, yeah, but I am spiritual, but I still consume animal products, because it's also death to the animals is also a part of life. It's about accepting death. How do you view that point?
I think we need, I would ask the person, if they wanted to consider it from my point of view, to put themselves in the shoes of in the position of the animal that was having their life taken away to be eaten. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the that's at a very basic level. I understand that, you know, I feel very privileged and to have come across veganism, and it's kind of opened up my world and changed my direction. But I also know that could have not happened, and any of us can turn vegan, and any of us you know, we come across things that we're sort of thankful for and we're exposed to, and then we find it quite hard to communicate to others, and they don't see what we see. But yeah, I think it's quite difficult to argue against, well, if you were that animal and you were given a choice, wouldn't you want to live?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's yeah. But then in the animal kingdom, you also have, you know, animals eat each other as well, for the sake of survival. Do you see it because as humans we are more intelligent, we can find other ways to survive without eating the animals? Is that how you view it?
Yeah, I think well, not just as humans. I mean, I think there's animals make choices as well. You know, I've seen this depicted in our animations, but I think that sometimes those are inspired by behaviors we see in other animals. I mean, this isn't such a good example, but I just wonder why a panda, which is an obligate, I believe is an obligate carnivore, eats bamboo shoe, for example. And I think that there are other things at play here where we do have a picture of the past. We don't know how true it is, especially in a society that's sort of sided towards our conventional sciences at the moment, and we're in a very patriarchal society. So I don't, you know, how can we say we know what's true and what's not? I think we can appeal to nature as being right. Sometimes that because it happens in nature, that's true, and that's what needs to happen. That's what needs to continue to happen. but nature is changing all the time. Sometimes I see society and technology as not necessarily different to the environment and our planet. Is an extension of it, and it's an extension of its expression.
You are a volunteer at the Vegan Society.
Yeah.
And what do you do for them?
So I help organize locally, and that really consists of a sort of outreach stand every month. It's usually on a Saturday. We have an arrangement with the local council and the shopping centre, which has been really good for us this last 2 years at least, because we used to just be with the council out in the market square. But now in the colder months we have an arrangement with the shopping centre, and we have a stand. It's for one day, and it's actually for a few hours, and we have a rotation of volunteers and some leaflets to give out. Sometimes we provide food samples, or have a partnership with the local business to provide food samples, and we just talk to people sort of where they're at in their journey or their interest.
Yes.
So sometimes they are just vegans that come up and say hi and show their support, but we get to just talk to people about plant-based for the environment, for ethical reasons, for their health, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I saw on the Vegan Society website that the veganism has quadrupled in the last few years, which is a massive increase as well. And do you believe that is also because people become a bit more aware of what they eat, but also more aware of the industry that is behind animal consumption? Or why do you think it's such a big increase?
I think the normalization of it and it has really helped. I guess it was only 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that I didn't really want to disclose my identity as a vegan at work, but now that's so much easier. There's lots more vegans around. People are non-vegans are talking quite highly of plant-based options. I think also there are a lot more plant-based options. So there's a lot more food out there. There's a lot more veganism in the media. It's not associated with that sort of militant profiles so much, which I think veganism suffers from. And people are just happier for you to mention it. And I think people are also, if they're not vegan, they are perhaps they're not stigmatized, but they don't receive the same type of attention if they opt for a plant-based meal. So I think that normalization and that sort of acceptance of it, and as you say, awareness has really helped. It's promote it. And obviously I think one of the big drivers are environment. So awareness of the environment and trying to be more environmentally friendly. So sometimes the difficulty with presenting the idea of someone changing their diet and not eating animals anymore is that it's almost as though, we have been a very oppressive species. There's been a lot of we know of dictatorships. We don't like being told what to do, and if as a vegan, sometimes when you're practicing outreach or trying to get some of your messages across, you can get quite emotional and end up wondering why people don't do it, or even worse, telling people that they should. And I think that doesn't land well with people, because we've as a species, we work so hard to become less and less oppressive and become more liberate ourselves. And on the other hand, the difficult thing for me is I think that liberation comes from being able to liberate those that are most vulnerable, and that we could consider it as part of our society, and that includes the animals in our lives, whether they're in our industries or in our homes. we get rid of that, what does it do to our environment? An environment that seems to sort of have this nature about it that mirrors our activities. That, you know, if we're going to talk about karma and that kind of thing, maybe it's a change in our actions and behaviors that bring about. Maybe we haven't quite identified the things that could bring about more happiness and more peace and health and these kind of things.
Definitely. I think if I speak totally for myself, is I really enjoy eating more vegetarian, but why I'm struggling in becoming even more vegetarian, let's say just 100% or even vegan, is there's a couple of things for me personally, and maybe you can help me with this. Maybe you've got really good tips on how I can change this, because I'm happy to try new things that I'm not aware of. Three things actually. Number one, eggs and cheese. I'm Dutch. I was born with cheese. We call ourselves cheese heads. Okay. We love our cheese in Holland. Eggs as well, because of the protein. Now I do know you have a lot of protein supplements, such as beans and lentils, pulses, but they're not my favorite foods. I don't know either what to do with them, or I feel like more bloated from them. And the third one is, I just mentioned before, this might be a bit uncomfortable for people, but I'm very open, I just say everything, is when I, like a few times a year when I have my period, the night before, I struggle so much. I can eat all kinds of things, but the only thing that really help to calm my body and my mind is a steak. I don't eat chicken, I don't eat pork or turkey, but just that one steak, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. For some reason, it really helps me, and it's always the night before my period or my first day of my period. And then I think, how can I change this? Because I've tried, even like replacements or supplements or different things to sort of not eat that. But for some reason, my body just won't accept it until I have that steak at that particular moment. How can I help myself with that?
I think it's so important, because we seem, as a society, we seem to have such a long way to go to understand nutrition better. And I've never found all of the answers for myself, suffering from a lot of disordered eating, I've a history of some mental health issues, and and I've had to find different foods to almost help my situation throughout different periods of my life with different commitments and pressures on me. And I definitely think that other people have seen my eating choices as sort of strange and interesting, whether that's kind of Marmite with cheese or some other combination. And I think the other thing is, I think lots of information is useful, giving ourselves the opportunity to try things, giving ourselves lots of time to transition, if that's our desire, if that's our aim. So I wanted to start with that. In case you appear to want to, you'd be open to finding other options as long as they work, especially in difficult periods. And I think what I could recommend is a couple of things that worked very well for me. Just being very surprised with the effects of them. So I was vegan for a year and a half, and I guess I wasn't eating incredibly healthily. I was trying all of the processed and sugary and salty and oily foods, and then after that I discovered whole food plant-based, which has quite a simple principle behind it. It is all those foods that you've mentioned, like lentils and beans, and some of those foods that we find it hard to get used to, or cause bloating. But on a simple level, it's kind of eating fruits and vegetables as whole as possible, just as they are, I guess, and cooked. Combining that with grains and pulses, rices, beans, and those. And sometimes there's quite a variety there that you can find some some grains and some pulses. Some legumes and beans work better for you than others. I mean, chickpeas for me seems to work really well, whereas kidney beans I really love, but not so, a bit harder, it seems for me, to digest. And the other principle is kind of, if you can, well, eating whole is trying to reduce sugar, salt, and oil, or doing without them, which was a bit of a revelation for me. I kind of considered olive oil to be healthy and salt to be necessary, and it was a bit of a revelation to find out that wasn't the case. And when it comes to the actual fruit and veg, the more color there is, it sort of indicates the more vitamin and nutrient content. So if you think of a blackberry, black containing all the colors, that's lots of nutrients there. But white rice on the other end of it having the nutrients sort of removed from it. But anyway, the greens and the reds, they're all indicators of nutrients. So eating whole for me has been really beneficial, and I will say I can't do that 7 days a week. I like to do it sort of 4 or 5, and then treat myself on the weekends or on other days. And then in terms of information, which I think has really helped, there's a website called nutritionfacts.org. You may know Dr. Greger, or your audience may know Dr. Greger. He's part of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. There's a lot of his colleagues who actually do their own thing, which I do follow too. But with Dr. Greger and nutritionfacts.org, the basic thing is that he kind of compiles or collates studies and tries to present them. And obviously he's keen on trying to get people to eat more plant-based. The other, some of the studies on there that he presents might be for the efficacy, the effects on your body of eating certain vegetables or fruit or spices. I think that's the last thing I missed out on the plant-based whole food diet. I mean, it involves a lot of spices. Spices obviously have a lot of color, but there's and so lots of nutrients, but they also help to make the food more interesting. So it definitely encourages that. I'm born in Iran, so I found they have an article there on saffron, and just a wonderful study they did with saffron and depression, and how it has had the equivalent effect to some of the medication that's available for treating depression, but without any of and I'll just pick out one story actually that is from one of Dr. Greger's books, How Not to Die, or one study, just very briefly, which I like to use and I think is a really good one. It's about so there's 2 groups of people that were put in the study. I think I'm not going to get the dates right, but I think it was about 6 months or a year. One group of people, one of the groups, ate a whole food plant-based diet, the one that I described, 3 times a day at normal portions. The other group ate 5 times a day. Same whole food plant-based, so 2 times extra, and at double portions at each sitting, so it's considerably more food. And then at the end of the study, what was shown was there was no measurable weight gain between the groups. And just to describe that and why I think it's such a positive thing is the idea that when you're eating plant-based whole food, you're getting a lot of fiber there. There's and fiber acts in your body to sort of help it discard what it doesn't need, and it also helps with the digestion process as I understand it. But the very positive side to that, especially relating to me and some of my history with disordered eating, is that it's sort of a story that says something about eating until you're satiated, eating until you're full, which I think a lot of us kind of value, and that's sometimes what we need in life, especially if if we're under pressure or things become intense. And so I like to share that one. I don't know if those have helped, and obviously I'm not a nutrition expert, but I was certainly always happy to share this kind of thing. And I recommend looking up nutritionfacts.org or the Physicians Committee of Responsible Medicine. They have some great resources on their website.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I shall put those in the description as well. Yeah, and obviously you're not in nutrition, but I think it's always good to talk to someone who does live that lifestyle. But maybe I should actually experiment more with other ones that I've not tried yet, because I just sort of dismiss them all if 3 or 4 don't work for me.
No, entirely. And I think there's obviously, some of the time that to put into get these things and prepare them. I actually myself use a lot of prepared food, like in tinned food, so beans in water and these kind of things, and bags of salad. So I try to keep things quite convenient. But the only other thing I was going to say is, like, absolutely, you kind of get this information from people around you, people that might know you, or elsewhere from professionals, and it's all about sort of applying it to yourself, but also giving yourself that time. So I think even with the foods that you might be used to, sometimes I do say it takes some time for your body to adapt, but also it can be that if things go well, you don't miss any of the older foods that you might have relied upon, or
Yes.
and you can always try to find substitutes. And obviously, as a vegan, someone that's a proponent of eating plant-based, I'll always try and encourage that. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely to try it. If you try responsibly, then it shouldn't be doing any harm. Like you said, I think it's very important also with vegetarian as well as vegan to have all of the nutritions. Don't just eat lettuce. You need your proteins, you need your zinc, you need your B12s, your vitamin Ds. So definitely do, for the listeners, definitely do your research on any of that. Because we're both not nutritionists, so we can't. But we just share our own life stories and our own view. I really like that you said everything becomes a bit more normal. It's normal to be a vegan, it's normal to be vegetarian, it's normal to be spiritual. In my podcast, often it's mentioned that the teens at the moment, teens and people in their 20s and even children, they're so open about spirituality and food and sustainability and taking care of the environment and crystals, which is completely different from our sort of generation. We grew up very conditioned, and we're starting to become a bit more open as well now. So
entirely.
Yeah.
I think also we're influenced by conventional science, aren't we? And which is in turn influenced by sort of the thinking of an industrial age, and we're the prominent belief is that we're in a very mechanical universe, and there's no elements of karma, and everything is explained away, and consciousness is dismissed, as in it's a sort of that. I don't know if the things I've been reading up a lot about is sort of non-duality and this observer-based universe where it's we're connected to the environment around us. It's all really interesting stuff, and it tells a different story to, and almost a stronger one to, some of the theories of conventional science.
Oh, definitely. I think also a lot of people don't realize, and we talked about it before briefly, before our podcast, is that a lot of great minds, as we can call them, or the highly respected conventional science world, like Da Vinci, or obviously he was an artist, but like Einstein, Newton, Nikola Tesla, they were very spiritual. They loved crystals, but they also often they were vegetarian or vegan even, and we'd never heard of that until you're really going to do research into who these people actually are, rather than the conventional science that everybody knows. I thought that's very interesting. These people knew a lot of things. Tesla was obsessed with number, like he was obsessed with crystals and numerology.
No, entirely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the other thing, isn't it? You bring those names to those names. Obviously, we all know, and we're in a world which has very limited views, sort of in our sometimes in our media, or sometimes that I guess you can, with access to the internet now, you can get everyone's views, absolutely. But there are certain views that still dominate, that still perpetuate, and we're in a very male-dominated world. I mean, everyone that you brought up was male as well. But what I found, I'm really into engineering myself, and electronics, robotics, propulsion, aerospace, and what I found is that the people I've meet from all backgrounds, from different genders, we all have a level of ability, and it's very similar, and we all have our own ingenuity. And sometimes you find the most ingenuity just among the people around you. I mean, this might sound like, yes, that's something very obvious to say, but we kind of I guess our history books and the people that are promoted are often promoted in a certain way, so the additional information about them, like the other aspects of their personality, the other aspects of their belief, don't quite make it out. But we're so multifaceted, aren't we? There's just because someone is an engineer, that's not or someone that is spiritual, that's just not the only aspect about them.
No, definitely not. No, it can be a lot of, and even a lot of spiritual people that I know are actually very analytical. They love science. It's not the hippie that lives in the forest. Let's just put it that way.
Totally.
Which people that are not into the spiritual world, they think that is the case, but actually it's not. It's a completely different. A lot of people are more awake than others might suspect.
In terms of people and their ability. So unfortunately, I'm bringing up two men again, but this is Robert Lanza, and I forget the other co-author, but he writes about a theory of biocentrism. And it's kind of, if you haven't heard of it, it is oriented around an environment that's biologically centered, and it's based on observation. It's quite hard to explain the principles, but it just comes to mind that at least Biocentrism, the book, and the way it's written is both scientific and spiritual, and it's amazing to see that come together. And in terms of the actual scientific side of things, and the explanations, and including the references to mathematical theorems and quantum theory, I almost have not seen anything on par with it, and it's really nice to see that come from these two authors and be placed together. And I think the one other person I'll mention, who's a biologist by trade, I guess, or by as a practice, is Rupert Sheldrake. And I think Rupert Sheldrake brings up crystals, actually, but I really love his work and his methods, and also his experiments. They're really amazing and thorough, but he's also very spiritual. And if you don't know Rupert Sheldrake, it's really worth checking out his work on morphic resonance, and also telepathy in the animal kingdom, and ideas around consciousness. But just those two people have been really interesting for me, among others.
Yeah, they sound like very interesting books. That would be something that I would definitely listen to. I listen to audio books rather than reading.
Right.
But yes, it sounds very interesting. Thank you so much, Has, for this conversation. I think it definitely gives new perspective to all kinds of things. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
Thank you so much. And if people like to stay connected with you, you are on Twitter, which the link I'll put in the description as well. It's beetroot, but then the last O is in 0. And I'll put that in the description. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tali Loz podcast. Next week, Phoebe is back, and we are going to talk about female empowerment and divinity. See you then.